SegaBits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to Konami Talk? No, Sega Talk, episode 70. On this episode, we are going to be discussing a very, very popular Sega CD game. But before we get to that, I want to say welcome, George.
Hi, everyone. I almost thought you forgot about me. I was going to be like...
I didn't. I was getting you back for that episode you just went on. And you never even said my name. It's like I don't exist.
I was nervous that episode, okay?
I'm nervous on this one, too. Well, hey, if you want us to be less nervous, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us at any amount, you get to leave your comments and memories and whatever you want to say, and we'll read them at the end of the show. But if you support us at the $20 level, you get to pick what we cover every month. So on this episode, we actually have a Patreon pick, and we will get to Daniel Andress is his name. We'll get to his memories, but first, I want to kick things off by talking about Konami, because, you know, as we've said in past Sega Talk episodes, sometimes we'll be covering things that aren't from Sega, but they were made popular on Sega hardware. I think our last really big one was maybe, Power Stone?
I would say Power Stone. Maybe I'm forgetting it, but I want to say it's Power Stone, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it should be Power Stone. And then we've also covered other things, Bayonetta, which is kind of a gray area. But on this one, I feel like this is the most removed from Sega that we have ever done. It's not as though it was like Naomi arcade hardware and Sega made it a, console exclusive. In this case, we're covering a game from Konami, from a master, I guess. So... Let's talk about Konami. So the Konami of today is, I think, a lot like Sega. It's a Japanese entertainment, video game, and gambling conglomerate. Oh, exciting. Which produces cards, anime slots, pachinko, arcade machines, and, of course, developing and publishing video games. Notable Konami franchises include Metal Gear, Silent Hill, Castlevania, Contra, Frogger, Gradius, as well as subsidiary games, DDR, Beatmania, Bomberman, and Adventure Island. Konami has also developed great licensed games featuring characters from Warner Brothers, as well as the Ninja Turtles and The Simpsons. Konami was founded in 1969 as a jukebox rental and repair business in Osaka by Kajimasa Kozuki, who is still the company chairman. Imagine that,
Still?
I mean, it's gonna be a sad day when David Rosen dies, who helped co-found Sega, and he's still on the board. But imagine that he's still the company chairman. That's a pretty lofty title, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and do you think he still comes to work every day and stuff, or do you think it's one of those it's just by title kind of a thing?
I can't say. I mean, it doesn't sound like... I mean, would you come to work if it was Konami? I don't know. It sounds fun, but at the same time, 1969, it sounds like a time for the dude to retire.
For sure.
Now, Konami, what do you think Konami means? Because, of course, Sega is service games. Do you have any guesses?
I actually don't have any guess. This is something I never even looked up or thought about before. I thought Konami was just a made-up word that sounded cool. I don't know. Just sounds like entertainment. I don't know why. Konami, or it's like anime kind of in a way.
Company
anime. Anime company.
Konami. Yeah, maybe commercial. No, it's not any of that. In fact, Konami actually comes from the names Kajimasa Kozuki, Yoshinobu Nakama, and Tatsuo Miyasako.
It's kind of hard
it's the
to
names.
say but like
it is. So
you
it's
see it in our notes right here on the
yeah.
video
It's
form.
Kozuki Nakayama Miyasako Konami. So it's the first two letters of three guys' names. Not as exciting as I thought it would be.
I was gonna say,
and that's actually, it seems kind of rare too. I don't know of that many Japanese game studios that has their name coming from something. Like Nintendo wasn't like Ni Gimara Te Genobu, something like that.
Sega
But it kind
neither.
of makes sense then that the guy would still be around because he's like, my name's in the company name. Konami has headquarters in Japan and American offices in El Segundo, California, which is their gaming division, and Paradise, Nevada, which is their gambling. So, what are your opinions on Konami as a company, both today and back when you were a kid, and how do you think it compares to Sega?
Well, they never made a console, right? They were always felt
No.
like the big arcade person that never really like. They didn't even bother going in. I think they kind of knew that it was a lot of work for them. I'm gonna be
Right.
honest with you. I probably spent as a kid the most in arcades on Konami games, and like not even thinking about it, just because they had the licensing for Ninja Turtles and The Simpsons. So like every time you're a kid, you always go for what you know. You don't want to spend a quarter on a game you like. Oh, what is this? Battle Beast? I never heard of this game. Oh man, The Simpsons are right there. That game looks sick. So, and those
Right.
that beat 'em up Konami formula, it just really worked all the time. It was like you knew the bread and butter. You knew you were gonna have a good time smashing those buttons with your friends. So
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely that's how I remember as a kid Konami, and I also remember the like they used to release a bunch of TMNT games on consoles like Hyperstone Heist,
Right.
Lost in Lost in Time or whatever. And then they had those NES games too.
Turtles in Time, yeah.
Turtles
yeah.
in Time, yeah.
Yeah, I remember, well, for me, Konami was just like probably second to Sega in terms of my game library. I would have like Sonic, Hyperstone Heist, like those were my two kind of go-tos. And then I'd go to the store and I'd see that Konami logo and I'd be like, well, I liked Hyperstone Heist, so I'll check out Tiny Toon Adventures. I think they did an Animaniacs game. Obviously, at the arcades, I loved the Simpsons game and any of the other Ninja Turtles games. And then you kind of branch out from there. You're like, oh, what is it? Is it Sunset Riders? Is that Konami?
I think it is Konami, yeah.
Yeah. I have a poster, and it has like one of the Ninja Turtles, Montana Max, who was like the Yosemite Sam Tiny Toons kid, and then a Sunset Riders guy, and then someone else. And it's the weirdest poster. And I think because of that, Konami, like, I think they have a great, like, lineup in the 90s, but I don't think they had a great cohesive feel. There's nothing that really screams to me the Konami feel. It's mainly quality licensed games and Kojima stuff.
There's also Castlevania and Contra.
Right, yeah. And so I guess, yeah, maybe that's a little unfair, but it just never felt cohesive to me as a kid. And I think it may be because they relied really heavily on licensed games, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's great that they made great licensed games. As far as how it compares to Sega, it does really feel like they have similar roots. Sega starting as a photo booth company, and then their jukeboxes. But it feels like Konami never really went as far as or as successful as Sega, because, like as you said, they never tried a console. And I think that's kind of like the next level. And nowadays, what are they doing? Nowadays,
They're a entertainment resort, like they're a resort company for like that was after the whole Kojima fallout. They make mobile games. I've heard they're making a lot of money off of that. But there's a lot of rumors going around right now that Konami is trying to get back into gaming and trying to use their IPs. I do know that they just announced a Super Bomberman R online, where it's kind of like Battle Royale, but Bomberman style, free to play. I don't even know if that came out. I think I did a joke tweet on our Sega Bits account just because I was like, remember how we used to play Bomberman? It was the Saturn one with all the controllers, but yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
It sucks because they're also sitting on Hudson Soft IPs, like, Bomberman, so it's like, it's really bad. I kind of wish somebody would just, like, Sega would just come in and buy them. But seeing how everything's going right now, it could be somebody like Microsoft instead. But
I hope not.
Yeah.
Real quick, do you have a favorite Konami game?
One Konami game is my favorite. It's so hard to choose like one game. Mm-hmm. I would say one that changed my like appreciation for the company, where I was like, wow, these, and it's gonna be kind of stereotypical because like, and I hate going for stereotypical games, but. The first Metal Gear Solid blew my mind when I first saw it. I just couldn't imagine that could be that much voice acting, that crystal clear, and like taking that seriously at the time. It was that's just kind of creepy. Like I never played Snatcher before that, so when I saw my friend playing it, I was like, wow, the way that the camera pans, the way it's just like a movie. So definitely made me buy that game. I bought it like the next week. I never even heard of it until I saw my friend playing it.
That was kind of just like the game to own, I remember, when you had PlayStation. And then when PlayStation 2 came out, you're like, well, you got to get the new Metal Gear Solid. That's how it has been for a long time. For me, I have to go with Hyperstone Heist, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just because I played the hell out of it, and it's what really introduced me to Konami. It's kind of the Sonic to Sega for me, just in terms of just like very early memories. And yeah, I've never actually played through a Metal Gear Solid game, but I've played a lot of them for like a little bit. I would say the only Konami game that I really like completed and really appreciate is actually Snatcher. So I'm very happy that I'm covering this because, sometimes we don't finish some of the games that we cover. I mean, I think we can admit to that.
For sure.
But we at least try to play them. But it's so strange because in Snatcher's case, it's a rare game. It's so rare. We'll get into later how much it's going for, but there's no way I would ever want to own it. Not now. I kind of wish I bought it back when I saw it for like $300.
Oh God, is that much? Wow.
We'll get into it. So before we do that, we're going to have some memories here from Daniel Andress. So let's let him take it away. And are we playing those live on the show right now?
Yeah. Let me press play. Tell me if you can hear it.
Holy moly guacamole, Snatcher, the legendary Sega CD title by Hideo Kojima. I did not think you guys would do this game originally. Well, I mean, I did and I didn't. I don't know, because I know you mentioned before that you would do games like this. So I really am happy that you went ahead and did my request for this episode. I'm really happy again, because this game is definitely one of my favorites on the Sega CD. I really enjoyed it. It's the only other game I got to the end to on the Sega CD. So the only other Sega CD game that I beat besides Sonic CD. I was just really invested with its story, and it really surprised me that it has more than just 3 acts. And Police Knots is designed very similar. I think they both Snatcher has 5 acts, I think, and Police Knots has 10 or something. But I'm still playing Police Knots, and I'm really enjoying it. But Snatcher was quite an experience to remember. I don't want to give away too many spoilers. I'm pretty sure you guys might get into it later in the episode. But if there's anyone out there listening who hasn't played Snatcher yet, check it out. Unfortunately, this is the only version that will probably, unless if you know Japanese, this is the only version that you might, that you're going to have access to playing that is, in the native tongue of English. So, yeah, so with that being said, I recommend, emulating the game or possibly burning a disc for a Sega CD you might have, because this is a very expensive, pricey game. It's a $500 game, so even more than that. So the way I was able to experience is that I burned it on a disc, I played on my Sega CD, and I enjoyed it. And, I love its animation, its voice acting, its premise, its story, its characters. I fell in love with Metal Gear and Gillian Seed. They were just, I love Gillian, man. There's just such great characters. And I forgot his name, but there's the guy with the blonde hair. his name was like Random something. That guy, yeah, he was really cool. Like he was like, I fell in love with him. He was like Gillian's like rival buddy character. And then Jamie was a good character. I really liked Katrina and everything. Like I also really liked I liked everybody, and Mika, and Harry. How could I forget about Harry? Harry was cool too. So many great characters in Snatcher. So many great characters. And your informant character guy, the Napoleon guy, I forgot his name. He was okay too. So, Snatcher, if you like cyberpunk sci-fi stories like Blade Runner or Akira or Cyberpunk 2077, I recommend you check out Snatcher. And if you like Hideo Kojima games like Metal Gear Solid or Police Knots, I mean, you can't go wrong with Police Knots or Metal Gear. Check out Snatcher, guys. It is an amazing game. I fell in love with it. I beat it just last summer, and it was a game that went on and off with over time, just because I didn't have the time to play it. But I'm happy that I sat down and got through it. It's a point and click type style game. I'm sure George and Barry will get more into it in the episode. But yeah, thanks again, guys, for picking this episode. I'm really happy that you did, and check it out. And I don't think it's ever going to get re-released. No. Personal side note, what I would personally love to see is that hopefully Hideo Kojima or even Konami, whatever, are able, if Kojima gets the right to do this, that Police Knots and Snatcher will get a release side by side, like a 2-in-1 pack for the PS4, PS5, and in the future, and PC and everything.
It's crazy.
That'd be great to see that. Like the games do not have to be remade. In fact, Police Knots doesn't even have to be dubbed. We just need its English translation, and then we are set to go from there. So, like, minimal work, done and done. I would just love to see that happen, but I don't think so. I don't think Konami's obviously not going to do that. But if Kojima could, that'd be great. So, again, that's all I got to say about Snatcher. Thanks again for doing this episode. And that's it. All right. Thanks again.
Bye.
And, he is right. Like, that's the biggest surprise to me about the whole thing, Like, they never re-released it. Can you... Even though Hideo Kojima became, like, the Yuzuzuki of Konami.
Yeah, it is surprising because, like... And, I mean, this will kind of be the end of the episode, too, but I'll just say, like... People are so precious about him. Hideo Kojima. Oh, my God. Oh, Hideo Kojima. And they're never like, here are the original games that he made... for re-release, give us your money. Like, they never did that, but with Sega, they're like, Yu Suzuki, the collected works. Yu Suzuki, Sega Ages Classic. Yu Suzuki, PlayStation 2, Sega. Like, Yu Suzuki's original games have been re-released ad nauseum, but
not only they can't re-release them enough,
Oh, absolutely. And, diving into this now, believe it or not, Snatcher actually on the Sega CD was a re-release, if anything, a re-release and a remaster of an earlier game. So, Snatcher, I mean, we got to go back. It actually originally released to the Japanese PC 8801 and the MSX2 computers in 1988. This is an old game.
Yeah.
Then it came to the PC Engine Super CD-ROM in 1992. And then the Sega CD version was made specifically for the West. This really surprised me. I did not know this. The Sega CD version was made specifically for the West, with Sega CD and Mega CD releases in America and Europe, respectively, with no Japanese equivalent.
Wow.
And it's funny I'm learning that as I was doing the notes, because I remember when this game was going up in price, and I'm like, I'll import it. Yeah, I'll import it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so rare. No one has the Japanese ones for sale, but it's because they don't exist.
Yeah.
And that's so rare. That is so rare. Like, even here, what did we just cover? We just covered Feel the Magic, and that released to the West first, and then came to Japan like a month later. I thought maybe we'd get like a Japanese release down the line, but we didn't. It wasn't actually until 1996 that the game saw Japanese release again on the Sega Saturn, as well as the Sony PlayStation, and how those compare to this, we will get into in a little bit, but why do you think Konami favored the West over Japan in this instance?
I would say, I don't know. You know what? It's interesting. I want to say maybe the game didn't do so hot in Japan, maybe. I don't know what the sales figures were.
It did well.
It did.
It was
actually?
popular, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder, I don't know, maybe with the remake, they could only choose one. I don't know. It's so weird that they would skip Japan and just finally do it in America. But I would just assume this is Konami being Konami and just making bad decisions. Because, like, a lot of, like, Konami stuff, even when they do release a good game, it's like all the stories start coming out about how Kojima didn't listen to anyone. It's Konami and did whatever he wanted. And it's like, well, yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
so I don't know.
That's interesting because, Snatcher was written and directed by Hideo Kojima, as we mentioned. A man so prolific that he could fill a whole episode, but since this is not Konami Bits, we'll talk about Kojima a little later in the show, and this probably will be our only Kojima game ever, right? I mean...
we could do Police Knots maybe one day. Can we?
I guess so. Can we? What is that on? Is that on Sega CD?
It has to be on the Sega console, right? Come on.
Hopefully. But believe it or not, Kojima was not directly involved with the Sega CD or even the 32-bit versions of the game.
Sega Saturn, there you go. Police Knots, next week.
Oh, it was? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So when did you become aware of Snatcher, and be honest, have you played it?
Yes, and I became aware of it when I was basically waiting for Metal Gear Solid 4, so it wasn't like I played it, back in the day or anything, but I totally remember somebody was like, oh, you never played the Sega CD Snatcher? Obviously, I was... During the early 2000s, I figured out emulation, and so I would just go back and play like, oh, I never played Chrono Trigger. All right, so I would go back and try to beat it on emulation. So then I would do this with rare games I would never be able to play. And this is one of the games, that it was like, couldn't afford it. I guess I would just... emulate it. So that's what I did with this. I mean, anything else you want to know about the game? I mean, the question was if I played it, right?
Yeah, well, I can say that I've...
Go on. Oh, I didn't have any...
I can say that I have played it to completion, which I'm very proud of. I will come out and admit that unless it's a platformer or maybe a fighting game, I rarely make it to the end. That's why I think games like this and Shenmue really stick with me, because I'm like, oh, I completed it. And I don't know, I don't really compare this to Shenmue at all, but there's just something about it that's just so playable and accessible. There's no walls that you hit in this game. It's not like, oh yeah, after this one part, you hit a boss and you can't beat it. It's like, it's a visual novel, pretty much. And I played it on the GP2X Canoe, which was a Korean handheld that was open source. And so it had very, very good emulation. And so I played an emulated Sega CD game while I was commuting to work. And this game is 6 hours. So it took me a little over 2 weeks. And like with save states and everything, I never really had to go back. It's not like they're like, you died. The game over, never play again. It's more like, you died, continue. And so I got to enjoy it. I got to get really invested in it. And this is the first time I've really, thought about the game again. So I'm looking forward to getting into this with you. So let's get into the intro now. I have a video here. It starts at 49 seconds. If we could take a peek. Just to give people an idea of how the game starts.
Is that what you want to see? No.
Yeah.
I'm putting it up right now. It's just that it's full screen, so I have to, make it smaller.
Oh, that's okay.
I got it. This is emulated, too. Pretty good intro right there.
June 6, 1996. A mysterious explosion destroys the Chernobyl research facility near Moscow. Lucifer Alpha, a powerful biological weapon under secret development there, is released into the atmosphere, creating a deadly biohazard. Carried by the trade winds, Lucifer Alpha spreads throughout Eastern Europe and Eurasia, destroying 80% of the populace. Half of the world's people die. The greatest biohazard in history later becomes known simply as the catastrophe. But at this time, who could have possibly imagined that the ultimate biohazard wouldn't occur for another half-century.
COVID.
50 years later, mankind faces its greatest crisis. The appearance of a mysterious android life form. Its purpose and origin are unknown. Is it a new form of weapon? Or perhaps an invasion from some other world? They appear during winter, killing humans and infiltrating society by taking the place of their victims. Employing an artificial skin, they can sweat and even bleed. Part organic, part machine, they're almost impossible to distinguish from those they kill.
Binary domain.
As they steal their victims' bodies in order to take their
Everything's
place,
ripping off
these mysterious invaders become known as Snatchers.
Binary domain crossover. Oh.
So there you have it. Yeah, so pretty sweet setup. And had we let it continue loading, you would then see some pretty lengthy credits, which I feel like were kind of like a rare thing at the time when I was playing it. I'm like, holy crap, this is like movie credits. They're giving all the actors' names and like director names and all these things, which it makes sense given it's a Kojima game. Now, Snatcher the game sees you assuming the role of Gillian. Do you call him Jillian or Gillian? Gillian.
It's Gillian. The name.
Gillian.
Isn't that a woman's name too?
Well, Gillian Anderson from
go.
the X-Files.
There you go. That's the one I was
Gillian
thinking about.
Seed, a former soldier suffering amnesia who has an obsession with Snatchers. Maybe he likes the video game. Seed enlists in the Junker Agency, which is run by the Japanese government, with the goal of eliminating Snatchers. Over the course of the story, Seed uncovers a conspiracy that threatens the existence of the human race itself. So, at first glance, and I think you already said it, what does Snatcher remind you of?
I mean, Blade Runner. I mean, Gideon Seed definitely has that whole like vibe of the lead character of Harrison Ford. Mm-hmm. Like the trench coat, and he's like investigating these Blade Runners or Snatchers in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Blade Runner and Terminator, pretty much. Do you think it's unique enough a story, at least from the setup standpoint, to stand apart from its inspirations?
If you just saw the overview of the story, you'd probably think, this is just a ripoff. But I think when you go deeper into the story and the characters, it's kind of like they took a concept from a sci-fi and they really like animified it or whatever, like they Japanese, they did their own spin on it, and it kind of reminds me of like
absolutely,
and it kind of reminds me of like I'm trying to think of other things like 13 Cent. I beat it not that long ago, but 13 Sentinels by Atlas. It just takes a bunch of stuff from like sci-fi and he just throws it all in this pot, and then like you're like, oh, that's War of the Worlds. Oh, that's this or that's that, and then but they make it good enough to stand on its own.
Yeah, and I feel like at the time in the 80s when this game originally released, a lot of Japanese developers were really into American movies and Western movies. And I think there was this thought where it's like, I'm not ripping off, I'm making the video game equivalent of this movie I love. And that makes total sense, because at the time it wasn't like you were getting maybe you were getting Atari Star Wars, but it's not like anyone was making an adventure Star Wars game with the plot and the characters. So, in this case, it's like, oh, Blade Runner's sweet, Terminator's cool. There's no like true Blade Runner Terminator video game, so let's make one. And we'll get into some pretty blatant rip-offs later on, but I think it's an homage. I think it's kind of an attempt to make an unofficial fan game of movies that they love. So let's talk about the characters here. We got some sweet trading card artwork, and I believe these came from a fan site called Junker HQ. There is a ton of like goofy Snatcher merchandise, including these cards, so I pulled them when I could, but man, I can't say, but I bet
it has to be for like a lot, because like I was looking through the images and they're really low resolution. So if somebody actually owned them in the fan community, they would have scanned higher resolution ones, I think, right?
All right, so here we go. Snatcher cards complete basic set of 1 through 90 sold for $250 in February.
And that's just cards. It's not even the game, you know?
The Police Knots cards sold for a little under $300. Let's see, I'm seeing some other Snatcher cards here. 18 cards sold for $40. So nothing crazy. I mean, some are kind of crazy, but some aren't. But anyway, let's talk about the characters here. So we have the trading card for Gillian Seed, age 31, which is an estimate. He's a former member of the Siberian Special Investigation Force, a multinational unit from Asia. Suffering from amnesia, Seed cannot remember anything from his past except for the word Snatchers. His identity was discovered thanks to his personal belongings. Believing that they hold the mystery to his past, Seed travels to Neo-Kobe City and enlists in the Junker organization to discover his past. He is currently living apart from his wife, Jamie Seed, who was also discovered alongside him several years ago. The main character of the story, Seed's personality, is mostly dependent on the actions of the player, but he is generally depicted as a likable knucklehead, which is popular in Japan at the time, with a tendency of grabbing anything that is not nailed down into his deep pockets, and a bit of a failed womanizer. He sounds like a Yakuza character.
Yeah, I was going to say he's very much like...
Lupin the Third, too.
I wouldn't say he's a knucklehead in the thing, but like I actually read the Blade Runner book by Philip K. Dick, the Electric, and he was super womanizer in that thing, to the point where he like falls in love with one of the robots.
Hey, like, who wouldn't?
So like he's definitely influenced by that 100%. But why is
let's talk about
31 estimate? Mm-hmm. And this is already like when you're a kid and you remember Gillian Seed, you probably thought, man, this guy's a gazillion years old. He knows everything. He's the Siberian Special Investigation Force. But yeah,
he's a youngin'.
Yeah.
Well, you wanted to show someone even younger. We have Metal Gear Mark II. He is 1 year old because he was just born. He is a sentient AI whose physical appearance is modeled after the famous walking battle tank from the late 20th century. Ooh. So right here we've already established that Snatcher is the distant future of Metal Gear Solid. So that's kind of cool. Developed by Harry Benson. All Junker investigators are accompanied by a navigator which acts as a mobile computer, telephone, and storage unit. Metal, as his friends call him, has a nearly human personality and has a rather sarcastic personality. He especially seems to enjoy making fun of Gillian's antics whenever possible. He's a cute little guy.
Definitely.
We have Jamie Seed, 29 years old, estimated. Again, no one asked her, so we just have to estimate. This is Gillian's estranged wife. She and Seed separated a few years ago after they were unable to remember anything about their past together. She's a very caring and compassionate person. Jamie currently works as a researcher in Neo-Kobe Pharmaceuticals. And the one thing that really sticks with me, because I completed this game like 10 years ago probably, is that I remember how sad it was to be like talking to your wife and she's like doesn't remember you, and you broke up not because you don't love each other but because you forgot about each other. And that's pretty
smart. It's a smart way of using the plots. Like the whole this character has amnesia and he washed up to the island is such a like cliche plot point. Mm-hmm. But it's never taken further. It's like you fall on this island and you meet brand new people. Everything about your past really doesn't matter, and if it does matter, it's like, oh, you're the bad guy or something stupid like that, right? But you never like have to talk to your ex-wife when you forgot about your relationship or anything like that, right? So I thought it was interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of handling that. Next we have it was mentioned at the beginning, Random Hajil. We don't know how old he is, thankfully. He is a bounty hunter that is active in the Neo-Kobe area, who has already eliminated a few Snatchers on his own. His past is shrouded in mystery. And if you think we're going to reveal that, we're not doing spoilers on this, so I'm not going to talk about what happens in the end because you should play this game. Anyway, Katrina Gibson coming up next. She is, now this is interesting, she's 18, but in the Japanese version she's 14.
She doesn't look,
So,
I mean, I'm not an expert in ages, but like, she kind of looks like Sarah from Virtual Fighter in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into why they aged her up later on, but she is the only child of Jean-Jacques Gibson. Katrina is a model whose appearance can be seen around the city. She is a smart and strong-willed young woman, and Katrina can be very vulnerable at times.
Uh-oh.
And here we have her daddy, Jean-Jacques, or Jean-Jacques Gibson. He is 55, no estimates here. He is a former detective and crime scene investigator. Gibson joined the Junker after 30 years of service. Gibson's wife was killed during the Bioroid scare of 46, and as a result, he has a deep hatred for the Snatchers. With a degree in psychology, Gibson is an excellent investigator who brings his considerable experience to the field and one of the best members of the Junker organization. Then we have Mika Slayton, age 23. She is the operator of the Junker HQ. Mika is a very smart and empathetic woman who is coming from a mixed Jewish and Japanese household. Double majoring in both criminal psychology and municipal data management, Mika briefly worked as a civilian contractor for the Special Criminal Research Center of the Neo-Kobe Police. Unfortunately, the emotional toll from dealing with both victims and criminals became too much for her, and she resigned from her position. A very beautiful young lady, Mika will support Gillian during his mission in any way possible, assuming that she will not snap and break him in half after his repeated wooings. So maybe don't hit on her. This is what I think is weird. So let me tell you about these next two guys. First, we have Benson Cunningham. Age unknown. Cunningham is the current commander of the Junker Agency. Cunningham was Special Forces soldier in his younger days and even participated in Operation Foxhound during the 20th century. Before becoming the head of Junker, Cunningham was the leader of an anti-snatcher task force of the Neo-Kobe Police. He is calm, rational, and a brilliant strategist, and he's well-versed in science, law, and linguistics, and he has a black belt in judo.
Ooh.
So this is Benson Cunningham. But then next we have Harry Benson. So they have two characters who both work for Junker. One is first name Benson, one is last name Benson.
They ran out of names.
They ran out of names.
A good name.
And so they have Harry Benson here, age 55. I mean, on one hand, I think that's like kind of stupid, but on the other hand, it feels more real world, because have you ever worked at a place and you're like, oh, there's two guys on our team with the same first name?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's that. Harry Benson is 55. He is the chief engineer of the Junker, responsible for creating many technological devices that investigators use. He became orphaned during the catastrophe and taken in by the Japanese government, who paid for his education. He's a brilliant scientist. Benson attained his PhD at the age of 14 and won a Nobel Prize 3 times. Benson is a bit of a cultural throwback to the 20th century, often drinking and reminiscing about the good old days. So this guy, he's kind of like us, because he talks about the 20th century. He's like, man, those were the days. But the days were like,
now.
you know, 20
Yeah. 20, about 20 years. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
20 years for us, yeah.
Yeah.
So I like that guy, because I remember I was playing, I'm like, oh, he's like my age. You know, like if he were alive now, he'd be me. Now we have Napoleon, age unknown. He is Gibson's informant. Almost nothing is known about Napoleon's identity. He is believed to be a Chinese man who entered Japan illegally and has been living in Neo-Kobe.
Oof, his drawing is very stereotypical. Like, wow, okay.
He is. The only proof of his identity is his tendency of sneezing. So, there you go.
Oh.
And then you have some more to say about this offensive character?
Offensive?
Should we get him off the screen?
That's how I dress. What's wrong with that? God.
Let's get Isabella up here. We have Isabella Velvet. Velvet. 24. She is a famous hologram star. Velvet gained several awards in rapid succession. She was the first discovered by director... This is funny. So she was first discovered by director Ridley Scotty when she was dancing at the nightclub Outer Heaven. So
even the
very
even the
clear
name
Ridley
Outer
Scott
Heaven is a reference to Metal Gear Solid. But yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. What do you think about the cast, and do you have any favorites here?
Of course, the cast makes the game. To pick a favorite, I mean, I always thought it was interesting. What's his name? Random. What's his name? I forgot his last name.
Random Hajul?
Yeah, because it's like he's such a weird-looking character. He kind of reminds me of like I don't know, his drawing, his little art thing. I'm trying to get it back. He looks like a freaking psycho. He has the spiky hair though, but he has this like minor receding hairline, and he gives me this whole like he's a junker dude. He's like scummy. I don't know why. Right when I saw him, I was like, this guy is. There's something here. Obviously, I can't go into it, but
he's a bad guy. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I liked him as a character, and I thought all the characters did good, that he did a good job, and I thought he did. I mean, the game. He came up with the concept before 1988, and that's kind of crazy, the idea of making profiles that isn't like, this guy is special forces and he hates bad guys, so he fights bad guys. Mm-hmm. It's like, you didn't have like these kind of profiles for like Contra characters or Castlevania characters. I feel like
right.
He overthought about, I think he wanted, obviously, he wanted to be a movie director. He didn't want to make video games, but you could tell that he really thought about the characters and like the just like making them interesting, like having a half Japanese, half Jewish household and all that. Like those little things like that really made the difference, I think, to make them unique.
And to go back to what we were talking about a bit ago, when I said I didn't feel like Konami had like a real feel to it, I think it's because the Kojima stuff really exists in a bubble. Like, if he left the company and just kept making these games, I wouldn't be looking at, like, a Metal Gear game without the Konami logo and going, man, something's missing. It's not like... I feel like it's not like Shenmue and Sega and Yu Suzuki. I feel like Shenmue feels more like Shenmue when it has that Sega influence, whereas here, it really feels like Kojima almost, like, outgrew Konami or was, like, kind of his own thing. And just here I
was gonna say, it's just kind of like how when a Sega game comes out, it's like Sega logo here, Sega logo there, and it feels like more him. He's like I'll reference my other games, but like I don't think there was a reference to like Contra or Castlevania. Like there's not somebody reading a Castlevania comic book or something like that, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, you know what, actually there are a lot of Konami character cameos, but they are not from him. Remember, this port was not his doing. So
okay.
Any Konami like additions you see are them replacing things that he put in there that were either copyright infringements or they just wanted to have fun, I guess. So, but you're right though. He definitely kind of avoided that. Talking about the gameplay now, the gameplay is very much in the vein of PC point-and-click adventure styles. I think that's what was mentioned at the beginning there. However, it differs a little bit, and we'll get into that. But when you kick off the game at Junker HQ, Gillian meets his coworkers. He acquires his gun, his robot navigator. So it's very much, by the book introductions. I feel like a lot of RPGs have done this too, where it's like, where am I? I don't remember who I am. And then they're like, welcome to this place. Here are your weapons. Here's your friends. Go have fun. It is a very kind of stereotypical beginning to a adventure or RPG video game. As for Metal Gear, the little robot, not the series, he's very important. He acts as your menu system, allowing you to store data, make calls, and save your game. From there, you're thrown into the action with a call from Jean-Jacques Gibson to head to a deserted factory to catch some bad dudes. And after you arrive... So remember I read that big description of Jean-Jacques Gibson?
Yeah.
He's dead. They tore his head off. So
yeah.
they
like
put
the
all
image...
this, and he had a trading card.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was gonna say. It's like he's the big image that you see everywhere with the bloody head or whatever. When you search up the game, they always have like the gory scene where they show his head.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that they put all this effort into designing him, making this backstory, and he dies. And I said we're not going to have a lot of spoilers on this, but that's not even a spoiler. That's like the setup to the game, pretty much. Like you get that in the first 5 minutes. So what you are doing in the game is you are picking up Gibson's lead. So I think they put the effort into that because he is like kind of like almost a part of you because you're following what he has been doing. You're kind of picking up his story. And so Gillian begins his adventure, and over the course of 3 acts, the mystery of Snatcher is revealed. And I know there was a question of how many acts this game has. I think the idea is it's kind of like there's an intro, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then Act 3 kind of has a conclusion bit to it. So I could see how it feels like 5. What are your thoughts on point-and-click games in general, and do you think their nature actually lends themselves to being good for fast-paced action games? And before you answer, I will point out that like D was kind of a point-and-click adventure game. It really was.
I would say stuff like Persona 5 even has like visual novel aspects where like a lot of the game is just a character talking to you. And honestly, sometimes those aspects of the game are what draws me to come back when they're so well written. You're like, hey, I want to see what happens to these characters. Or there's also the Tall Tale games that like did The Walking Dead and all that and sold gazillions of copies. They're trying to reinvent a point-and-click adventure or novel-style games. As for point-and-click adventures, when I was a kid, I hated them. I thought they were like, I just didn't understand them, especially when I used to play like some of the smaller, like some of the PC stuff where you would get stuck. You know, those ones where you have to like get a tool and then now you have to go, oh, you're stuck in this room. How do you get out of the room? And then you have to figure out where to click and like what to put together. Ow, I used to hate those games because I would get stuck on them all the time, right? So I guess it depends on the execution of the game and how they how easy they made it. Now as an adult, I piece it together, and if I can't, I just look it up online so I can enjoy the story.
Right. Yeah. For me, I grew up on an IBM PS2 computer, which is super old if you look that up, so that's really dating me. But there were so many point-and-click games on that. Hugo's House of Horrors. There was a fantastic Roger Rabbit game where you would have this, and I don't even know if you can emulate it. I got to play it again, but it would start off in like a scene, and Roger Rabbit would be here, and you had to set point and click and like set everything so that you click kind of like start, and Roger would go through and like trip and then slip and then like hit his head and then jump and then hit the fan, and it was so fun because it was almost like a platformer point and click. In the case of this game, though, it's not so interactive like that. There isn't even actually any pointing or clicking. Snatcher is actually like more menu-based in its execution. So players have commands like move, look, investigate, and they can use various items. And this might sound like a step back, but for someone who's played games like Monkey Island and, like I mentioned, Hugo's House of Horrors, it is a chore to pixel hunt and click every corner of the screen, because sometimes it'll be like you click a guy, and then you click his nose, and they're like, oh, that's where that booger is, and you're like, oh, I had to click his nostril? Like, it's so specific. So at least in here, I think Snatcher kind of excels just because, like I mentioned, this game is an action-adventure game, but it's point and click. But I think by simplifying things, they make for a speedier adventure. So if you're in a room, you just look. You don't have to click around. You just say, look, and it'll look at what you need to look at. The only problem is you can't do specific actions like open or pick up. So if you want to open a door, you kind of have to like look at and use a door, which makes no sense. Like, hey, George, can you go use the door?
Sure. I'll go open the door. No.
No, go look at it and then use it.
You think it's Japanese? I mean, you said it was made for here. I don't know. We're gonna get into the development of it, but like, was it still made by a Japanese staff?
Yeah, it was. So I think, I mean, I have played some text adventure games where you type things in, and it'll be like, look at the floor. You looked at the floor. You see a wrapper. Pick up wrapper. Don't know what pick up means. Get wrapper. You grabbed it. And it's like, you don't know what... Yeah,
I never played one of those. I never played one of those, but like, when I was watching the Netflix, they did the whole thing, like the history of games or whatever. You know, like, there's one on like the CBS, the Sega one, and then there was Tom Kalinske was also on this other one. But anyway, they showed those games, and I'm like, I can't even just imagine myself sitting in the basement typing words, hoping to get by to pick the right word. I can't even put two items together in a visual. I mean, in these point-and-click adventure games, so good luck.
There's a few I played that were completely text-based. One was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is kind of funny because it makes fun of text adventures. Another one is actually, I feel like it must be dark web stuff. It was on a disc, and it was like 100 freeware games, and it was called Torture. No. And you basically torture someone, but it's all text. And so it says, like, put the thumb screws in. How many thumb screws? And I'll be like, 100. And it's like, game over. You killed your victim. You know? So it's like, and after watching Game of Thrones, I'm like, right, you got to flay the finger a little bit and then leave them. That's all you got to do.
Yep.
So I've learned. So do you think this simplification was a good idea, or would you have preferred this game to be like point and click, where you have a little cursor, you move it around there?
No way. There's no reason there's no reason to do that, in my opinion. Just give the story.
No way.
Yeah.
So in the home country of Japan, and we've been using this term, Snatcher was known as a visual novel, which is probably better describing the game than point and click or even text adventure, because it's its own genre. That has not really taken off in the West, but there are some visual novels that have become, I wouldn't just say quite popular, I'd say insanely popular. And there's one that's coming to mind. I will raise no objections, and there is no right or wrong answer, but can you tell me what game I'm thinking of?
Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney.
That's right.
Dude, I used to play the oh my god. When I got a little R4 thing where you could like pirate games, oh my god, I was playing through those games. Those games were addicting. Yeah, great games.
They brought Phoenix Wright to iPhone, and it was perfect. It had the dual screen. It was all touch, and it was probably one of the best like iPhone ports I ever played. Because I went back and I played it on the DS, and I was like, oh, this is not as good, actually. But yeah, those games are fantastic, and that's why I feel like now, as mentioned at the top of the show, like, bring these back. Like, Phoenix Wright is so popular. In fact, they're bringing more Phoenix Wright games over, the Sherlock Holmes one, I think.
Yeah, or it's like Herlock Shlomes or something, whatever.
Herlock Shlomes, yeah. So yeah, but I think what helps too is Kojima kind of elevates it, because you know the game's world, it's fleshed out. You can read the supercomputer at the HQ and get all of these character bios. You can read up on the past, and I feel like that's something we do a lot in RPGs now. Like, you collected a page of history, and you know you compile like a 50-page book and you can read it. Do you ever read that stuff? Like all the way through?
No. Well, you know what? The only time, sometimes, I mean, it depends on how, like, obsessed or whatever I get to with it, but, like, I remember when I would play, like, Metal Gear Solid, they had briefing missions, like little cutscenes where it's just basically just, like, a drawing with, like, some filter and then text with voice acting. And I used to watch those things when I was a kid all the time. Like, I wanted to know every single thing about Snake and his mission and all the things that was happening, so I would go in and then unlock all the files and stuff, and it would give you more cutscenes and more cutscenes to look through. I liked, so yes, in a way, yeah, I guess I do, but yeah. What about you?
Yeah, well, I know Shenmue was infamous for it with the passport, and I believe what was so weird about it was you had to log into the internet to read bios of the characters when they could have easily put it on a disc. But I did that. I'd be like, oh, what's the burger chef? What's his deal? So I'd read like his birthday and his blood type and crap like that.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, Snatcher also has a gun mechanic. In my opinion, this is woefully underused. Now, I played it, as I said, on a like handheld. Nowadays, though, I do have the Justifier gun. And the way this works then is you're playing the game with your controller, but you should always have that Justifier gun plugged in and sitting there. And during the 6 hours time that you are playing the game, you're probably only going to be seeing this happen 2 or 3 times, which I think is a real shame because it works surprisingly well. It's a 3x3 grid, and it's sort of like a game of whack-a-mole. I'd kind of describe it also as kind of like Samba de Amigo, where it's just like, tuk, 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 you know, you move the gun around and it switches to the place it should be. It's very simplistic, but it works as a very fun little mini game. It's such a shame that, like, you know, you get this cool gun with lethal enforcers, you have it hooked up, you're ready to play, and you only use it 2 or 3 times. I personally think it's a wasted opportunity. I think it would have been really cool to have like a training room or to have this come up a lot more often. Did you remember this mechanic?
I was just thinking about it. I was like, light gun. I'm like, I remember maybe seeing the cover saying light gun, but like, I don't remember this being a light gun game. It felt kind of like added on.
It was for sure.
Was this in every single version of the game, or just the Sega CD version of it?
Just the Sega CD version. You're right. So when you look at the cover of the game, it says compatible with the Justifier game accessory. And when you're going to slap that like on the cover and see the guy with the gun, you think this game's going to really rely on it or be a light gun game. And it's a visual novel with a mini game that I wouldn't even call it a mini game. It pops up 2 or 3 times. I think this game, as much as people love it, it would have been elevated so much if they like doubled that. If there was even like 10 times you used it, that would be enough. And I think that would be enough to really make more of an impact. Because then you're like playing the game, but you always need to have that gun at your side. Because maybe you're like, oh, they're going to start attacking me. Boom, 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 boom. And they don't use it that much. I don't know why. Maybe because on the PC version, like, they didn't think ahead and think, oh, it's going to use a light gun someday. I don't know. So if I could say one negative, that would be it. But it's not a really bad negative because, I don't know, maybe people wouldn't like it. It's doubtful that Snatcher would have been as memorable had it not had voice acting.
Yeah.
And not just any voice acting, it had good voice acting. So, in a rare instance, a 90s video game had effort put into both the translating of the game script and the hiring of competent voice actors. I remember myself playing this for the first time, and I was like, these sound good. It's not like, don't come, please don't shoot me, you know, like House of the Dead.
Yeah, that has its charm too.
Gillian was played by Jeff Lupetin, who isn't that well known. He narrated 3 documentaries, The Beatles, Marilyn Monroe, and James Bond, before playing Gillian, and he has since only done a few acting jobs, including the voice of I Am Hungry in the McDonald's cartoon, a voice in Red Faction, and appearing in 1 episode of Chicago Fire. In fact, none of the actors really have careers outside of this game. And do you think maybe it's because the voice actors were in an industry that was just not ready for them at the time?
Maybe, like, let's look back and like think about like how many games during this time even used voice actors, and I think maybe a lot of it has to do with the directing. Whoever did the voice directing, like Sega was pretty terrible at like getting talent, or like whoever did their voice work, like they would be like,
they
one
were
take,
awful at it.
They're like, don't come. Yeah, that's good. All right, next line. Like, get out of here.
And I love Yu Suzuki, but I've heard horror stories of just how poorly he directs voice actors. He's like, oh, you're an old man now. I wasn't hired to be an old man. Be an old man.
Wow, yeah, not good. It's like he was trying to save money in voice acting, and it was like putting all the money into graphics and music. But
right, but here they're so, it makes the characters so endearing, and as you know, the in-game art's great, the writing's great, and then you have the voice acting on top of it, and it's great. I love it. It's really good. It's surprising. It's shocking.
I will say that Sega got a lot better with the Yakuza English voice actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but imagine this. The first English Yakuza is like not great compared to Snatcher, which came out in 1994.
No, and it's
crazy.
It's also crazy that like the worst voice actor in Yakuza 7 is the guy that played Kazuma in the first one. When he comes out, I'm like, oh, dude, this guy, he can't act. He's just like, oh, hey, everyone, hi.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, that was a fun little throwback, but you're also like, well, if you can't get Mark Hamill back, maybe not get this guy back.
You know, that's funny, right? Mark Hamill would have been the biggest actor they would have brought back.
He doesn't remember it, though. So, in total, Snatcher, jumping back in here, it takes 6 hours to play, and it's actually quite forgiving. Some would classify it as easy, but I would say it is the perfect difficulty and length. And do you think Snatcher would probably be as beloved now had it been like a 14-hour game and had like a difficult boss halfway through?
You know, maybe I would say no, but like, you know, it's hard to tell because even Yakuza games where they're pushing some of the stories where like even when you play, you're like, all right, it was cool. It was 13 chapters, but chapter 5, 6, and 7 were just side missions where you're like chatting with other characters. It doesn't. It's not moving the story forward. Maybe he could have done stupid like take your girlfriend shopping chapter to fill it in and get more character in. I mean, it depends on how they do it, but at this time, definitely not. You want it to be as slim and as hard hitting as possible and get you out of there because I'm gonna be honest with you, like how many games are even 6 hours? Like Super Mario World does not take you 6 hours to beat. Like if you're good at the game, you'll go through it quick. Like you probably speedrunners could probably do it in 3 hours. So like,
right?
Yeah, they didn't have difficulty, so I would say 6 hours is a great length for a visual novel.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I beat this game about 10 years ago, and I want to go back and play it again. I was actually looking into how to maybe burn myself a copy or just play it on my computer. But yeah, yeah, I know I should really splash out for the retail release,
or just get the EverDrive,
because I don't want. That's what I plan to do, but I don't want to get Kojima mad at me because the game's creator Hideo Kojima. Let's get his beautiful face up here. He never ages.
This is a 1988 picture, right?
Might as well be. He ranks high among game developers. I think he's seen as an auteur of video games. He grew up with an interest in action-adventure films and literature, and in 1986 he was hired by Konami and created Metal Gear a year later for the MSX2. Metal Gear was one of the earliest stealth games and launched not only a genre, but a franchise for which he is best known for. We kind of discussed this already, but like, what do you think about the Metal Gear franchise as a whole? And do you think
I'm indifferent? Like, I love.
When did it go downhill?
In my opinion, dude, oh man, when I was a kid, I was so upset with Metal Gear Solid 2. Don't even like just that they faked like. When I played Metal Gear, I mean, people are gonna hate me for this. I always get like people go. There's a lot of people that like 2, so like, because it kind of pulls the rug under you what you think a game is gonna be like, and I get their point of view. But when I was a kid, when I played Metal Gear Solid 1, they always talked about all these great adventures that like Solid Snake went on, and like they're teasing that even the conspiracy goes up to the president and all this stuff, and I'm like, ooh man, the next one's gonna be the U.S. government after Solid Snake, and it's gonna be like more espionage, maybe open world, some crazy things.
Right.
And then you play, and you're playing a totally different character, and the story is like some dude cut his hand off, and now this dude is that dude with the hand cut off, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? But and I like Metal Gear Solid 3. It's almost like that scene in Sopranos, right? I thought I was out, but they pulled me back in. And then I also like...
he's quoting another...
Yeah, he's quoting The Godfather, I know. Is it The Godfather?
Do it again. Do it again.
Do it again.
Thumbs up. Pull me back in.
I just watched the first season not that long ago, but
I might just start watching Sopranos again. Don't talk about it. I've watched it 3 times already. I'll do it a 4th.
But as you, from an outsider's perspective, what is your opinion on the Metal Gear Solid franchise and like how huge it got for Konami?
Man, like I have the first Metal Gear. I think it's NES one. Maybe it's Metal Gear 2. But once it started to hit the PlayStation 2 and get all 3D, I was kind of jealous. I thought it looked really cool. And then when I got a PlayStation 2, I rented it, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool, but it's like the cutscenes are insanely long. The graphics are kind of blurry and very green. That's what I remember.
That's totally PS2 stuff, though. Like, the PS2 just has, like, really blurry output.
Yeah, exactly. But I just remember it being, like, kind of like Yakuza in the sense that it doesn't take it takes itself seriously, but then it does the most wackiest, funniest things.
Yeah,
and
that's for sure.
That's what I kind of like about it, because it knows it's a video game, and it's like, you know what, we're gonna be serious, but then we're gonna be like hiding in a box is totally normal. And then of course you have the iconic, exclamation point, the whoop, which was actually in Wreck-It Ralph. I watched that recently, so that's in there. Nice. But yeah, there was that 3DS one, I think, that used the camera. Do you remember that? And you could take pictures of camouflage.
I think it might be the third game,
Twin
but like
Snakes.
remake. It might have been Twin Snakes is the GameCube one. I'm pretty sure that was the Metal Gear Solid 3. I never played it actually.
Yeah.
Let me Google it.
So it's fun, innovative,
Yeah.
but now that he's moved on, last I remember, what Platinum Games was making them.
They made a Bayonetta style Metal Gear Revengeance or whatever it was called. Game, and I suck at that game so bad. Like, I try beating it because everyone's like, it's so good. But like, they have this mechanic where you have to parry instead of like dodge. So when they hit you, you have to time your button to like smack it at the right moment. I can't get this. Man, I'm too old for that, man. I can't get the timing down. I'm just eating hits left and right. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
Kojima, he's done some other games too. We have Zone of Enders. Have you played those?
I did play Zone of Enders. Yeah. First PlayStation 2 game I ever played.
I think I own that. I'll have to go look. When at my old job, a coworker was like, I have a bunch of PS2 games, I'll give them to you. So I think that was in there. Also, there was Snatcher, Police Knots, as we've mentioned. In 2005, Kojima founded Kojima Productions within Konami, and in 2011, he was made VP of Konami Digital Entertainment. In 2015, his production studio split for Konami, and he created 2019's Death Stranding. And I remember seeing that collector's edition at Best Buy. It's huge.
Yeah.
Seeing as film and literature are major influences on his work, Snatcher clearly was inspired by Blade Runner, The Terminator, and the classic The Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh.
Even characters within the game look like film characters, so let's check these guys out. We have Random Hajil looking just like Sting's Fade Rautha Harkonnen from Dune.
That's why I don't trust them. He's Sting, dude. Nobody trusts Sting.
Exactly. And then one Snatcher looks just like Roy Batty from Blade Runner. And it's not like looks just like it's the same collars, the same clothing. It's such a ripoff.
They use them as reference for sure.
Absolutely. More than reference. Like, I want them to look like this guy, and they're like, oh, we'll just copy it. Now we do have here, so this is a Shmupulations article, and they've always been so helpful, so check them out at shmuplations.com. They do awesome interviews that are translated from like old publications. So let me take a drink of water here. I don't know how much I'll read of this, but I just thought this was really interesting because it was not so much an interview. He wrote this about Snatcher, and so little is said about the game's development that it was cool to see.
Look how young he is right there.
He looks older there.
Yeah, somehow. I think it's a suit, right?
So Snatcher was released for the PC Engine last year. This is him writing on October 23rd. Time sure has flown by. It's almost been a year and a half. Now with some distance between it and me, I can look back on Snatcher and share my memories of it. So this is him doing a retrospective just after the game came out. There's something lonesome about it, but I'll do my best now to respond to the questions and comments you've all sent in. In the letters I've received, the most common question is, what happened to Gillian and everyone after the game? It ends on a tantalizing note, with Gillian deciding to go back to the Snatcher factory in Siberia, and I realized it's natural to want to know what happens next, but I don't think it's wise for me to answer that question. There are things I'd personally like to do and see happen, but that is my perk as a developer. It isn't the Snatcher that already exists in your hearts. Gillian, Jamie, and the others are now all a part of you, and I think it's best that each person's vision of their future be allowed to grow in its own way. Snatcher is now out of our hands as developers, and you could say it's walking on its own. As our decision to not depict the Siberia Auto Factory is part of that. So what he's talking about here is that the game ends on a cliffhanger, and that was intentional. And he says it's not even like he was setting up a sequel. It was just like, I want the game to live on in your hearts without an ending. What do you think about that? That's kind of shitty.
I feel like
and I'm not talking about the Sega CD version. I'm talking about the PC Engine, like the earlier ones.
Okay. That is kind of shitty, but it feels kind of like I'm done with this. Moving on now. Thank you guys for everything you guys... I don't know. It's weird, right? Kind of reminds me of of what Ridley Scott would say after the movie Blade Runner, where they asked him, oh, is Harrison Ford a robot or what? And he's like, oh, I don't know. For like the longest time, he would be like, I don't know. And then he like re-edited the movie to like basically say, yeah, that's what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
And to wrap up his little writing here, I'm going to skip to the end. He said, my concept for Snatcher was not to make a game with a broad and shallow appeal that anyone from children to adults could enjoy. The concept was different. This game would appeal to and remain etched in the heart of a very specific kind of person. Also, I should probably say that compared with other media, Snatcher's story setting isn't very good. We borrowed a lot from Blade Runner. It certainly wouldn't be strange if someone thought we were just screwing around. We received criticism for things like the hackneyed dialogue, which was nothing to cry home about. However, what I was interested in was not an original story or world. The world was simply the empty vessel for the activities and lives of the various characters that you meet, and the inexorable fate that they are dragged into unawares. I wanted to present that experience, which can only be adequately conveyed in a meaningful and satisfying way through interactive media. In whatever shape or form it takes, this is the kind of game I want to make again.
And I would say he's kind of stayed making those type of games. Like Metal Gear Solid is very heavy on story, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. He knows how to write English. I mean, it was in Japanese, but he's a pretty good writer.
Yeah.
As you can tell.
So, as he's talking about in that interview, the MSX2 and PC 8801 are really his version of the game. And like I said, released in 1988. Visuals on these ones are stuck in a small window in the corner of the screen, and the game's limited to 16 colors, so it looks very dated. Both versions are essentially the same, but the MSX2 has the option for PSG sound and enhanced music, while the PC 8801 uses FM synth. There is some content that did not port over to the Sega CD, including the ability to use your actual computer keyboard to solve a puzzle. So I won't give it away, but there's a character who's like search the house, and you're like, what house? And on your keyboard there's the home key, so you're supposed to hit home. You know?
Yeah.
And then there's also a fourth wall breaking crash screen. You want to bring that up? I thought that was pretty funny.
This is definitely very him.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty good, where it's saying like, you crashed the PC, therefore the investigation terminates at this point. And then the characters talk, and they're like, well, I'll tolerate you this time and repair this. And then Gillian goes, wow, I'm saved. And then Metal Gear goes, don't try this again. You know? 1992 saw Snatcher ported to the PC Engine Super CD, featuring enhanced graphics and more colors. The menu interface is retained, but there are voiced cutscenes and CD quality music which were lifted from an album which was actually released prior to this. And believe it or not, the original 1988 release of the game never had an ending, as I mentioned. The game ended with Act 2, whereas here there is an Act 3, which is largely cutscene based, and resolves much of the story. So, you know, having read that interview now, you know, you waited 5 years for the end of the game, but you have to buy new hardware.
Yeah.
And Konami, and it's Konami that did this, not Kojima. Kojima's idea of the game is, and again, I don't want to spoil it, but it's basically, you got to go to this factory in Siberia, and the game ends. Whereas here, you got to go to this factory in Siberia, and then there's an Act 3, and you see what happens at the factory. Now, he had very little input, so it's almost like the ending of this game is not his ending. It's a ending, but it's not his ending.
Isn't that weird?
How does that make you feel? Do you feel like it's like, which do you prefer? Would you rather have the developer's vision of not having an ending, or the company tasking people to remake the game and having an ending?
I would have wanted, obviously, in the real best world possible, Kojima coming up with the ending, right? But like, oh man, right. I don't know. I feel a little sketchy, you know. Like, obviously, it needed more to it than just going, I'm going to Mars, see ya, Poochie, and then he just like leaves the screen. And so like, my thing is like, it's so weird because like, this is kind of the history with him and Konami. Like, the NES Metal Gear games, he had nothing to do with them. They right. followed his structure, but like, he wasn't, like, the second one was just its own story on the NES. It's like he didn't even do any of it. So it's like, it's weird. That's just how Konami was at the time, I guess, but
right. I mean, like, I enjoy movies where it's like, you know, Inception, where you're like, oh, is the top gonna fall? Or Blade Runner, where it's like, is he a robot or isn't he? But in this case, it's not so much like a yes or no question and then the audience has to decide. It's more like there is more to the story. Like, they're going somewhere. What's going to happen? I think that's kind of a weak ending, just because it's setting up something interesting and you never see it. And I mean, you could sit and speculate, oh, I wonder what happens to him, but it's like, we're never getting Snatcher 2. Mm-mm. So I kind of appreciate that they gave him an ending. And from what I remember, it's a fun ending. You know, there's some silly things that happen, and it's, you know, it works. It's a cool ending. Leading up to the release, too, of the PC Engine, they actually had a pre-release disc which established the game's world, and it also featured artwork and music. I kind of think it's kind of like the Snatcher equivalent of What's Shenmue.
I was going to say, did they call it What's Snatcher?
What's Snatcher? And in 2020, the PC Engine Mini released. Did you pick that up? It was called the TurboGrafx 16 Mini here.
I did not. Did you pick it up? Okay.
I did, yeah. It's
what do you think of it?
M2 did it. It's pretty cool. It's got a really nice port of Space Harrier, and I think Fantasy Zone. But what's nice is you can switch to the PC Engine. Everything's on there. But they included Snatcher, but they didn't translate it. And I mean, I'll answer the question before even asking it. I think they dropped the ball immensely on not translating Snatcher. This is a game, and again, we will get to how much this thing costs now, selling on a little plug-and-play console that sells for $100. Now imagine if this came out and it was like, including the first ever translated version of the PC Engine release of Snatcher. Like, sure, it's not the Sega CD version, but they're pretty close, and you could be playing it in English. Tons of people would pick this up just to play Snatcher. They're like, imagine the Kotaku article. It's like, Snatcher is finally releasing again in English, but there's a catch. And everyone's like, shut up, Kotaku.
Yeah, get out of here.
It's just like... So I have booted it up. I have played what I could, but it's not the same. It's just not.
Who owns the TurboGrafx 16, and why didn't they just put the translation down on this thing? I mean,
I don't know. I think wasn't it
Nick
George? It's actually Konami.
Oh, really?
Konami released the TurboGrafx.
Do they own the branding? So technically now I guess they do own a console. Like, yeah, it's the TurboGrafx 16, even though at the time it wasn't them. It was a totally different Japanese company that made it, right?
It was NEC.
Yeah.
NEC. But Hudson Soft made the CPU. So I guess when they acquired Hudson Soft, they acquired all that stuff. Man, see...
Sega should have bought Hudson.
Don't come to a Sega podcast expecting us to be Konami experts.
Yeah, I'm not a Konami expert. I didn't even know they released. That's crazy. I don't even own the TurboGrafx 16 re-release, and I didn't even know it had Snatcher on it. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Now the Sega CD version, which is our focus of the show, it released in 1994. As mentioned, no Japanese version exists. This is based on the PC Engine release, and the game adds a few extra scenes, including an extended intro, which I think is awesome, as well as an extended third act with more interactivity. So if you were hearing people complain about the PC Engine third act being basically a long cutscene, in this there is a bit more to do. It doesn't feel so much like a tacked-on cutscene. There is a little bit of censorship, though. Let's look at some dog guts. So Oof. This is, it's not like he ate spaghetti and it spilled all over his tummy. This is a dog whose stomach is ripped open.
Wow. And
his guts are out. And this was censored in the Sega CD version. I think rightfully so. It's pretty bad. Also, the character Katrina was aged up from 14 to 18.
Thank God.
And thank God, yeah. And Gillian's advances, because she's like a model, like a sex symbol in this like future.
In like seeing, I don't know, man. That's just weird. It's like it's
it is
like,
weird.
It's like Game of Thrones when they aged up the characters. I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. We're gonna watch it on TV. Yeah. I don't want to feel gross.
Gillian, as I mentioned, his advances on women, like he would hit on them. It's toned down, but not completely removed. I think they probably scaled back like what he said. I didn't put it in the notes, but there was something where it was like prove who you are, and instead of showing your ID, like one of the options is to show them your penis.
That's
and it's like
this game would be canceled today.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. Like Louis C.K. And despite all of this, there is an exclusive call to a phone sex hotline, which has to be seen to believed. I believe there is a transcript out there, but it's goofy. Snatcher later released to the PlayStation and Sega Saturn, but only in Japan. And this version features more colors, redrawn graphics in a lot of areas, and censors much of the gore. It also adds some really terrible CG scenes. So let's...
Terrible, dude. You want to scale that back?
Let's take a look.
You want to scale that back?
We got a little video. Well, let's see this video. I think it looks pretty good, right?
I think. Well, I mean, the Sega Saturn had some of the best technology for 3D, so I'm assuming it's gonna look amazing. All right, I'm gonna play it. Let me put it the volume.
I'm already watching it, but I'll jump back.
Is this
the
real?
Character model.
Oh God! Jesus! Oh my God! The way he runs. That's how I run. With red eyes, too, obviously.
Like, I love the show Reboot, and even that looks better than this.
I was going to say, it's like Reboot, but like if they did it 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, they should have never done this. They didn't need this. Wow.
No.
He just blew him away. Oh, that's a cool fade, I guess. I wonder what Kojima thinks about all this, like all these re-releases they did with more stuff.
He doesn't seem too precious about it. I don't know. It's almost like, well, I made my version.
The incomplete version.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't need to watch any more of it.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Get it off here. Get it off here. Now, as mentioned, there was a lot of like copyright infringement in this game. So any version, you're going to see some weird cameos. The computer versions featured predator masks that you could wear to a costume party, but later it was changed to mummies. Also, there's various manga and sci-fi characters that appear, including the alien from Alien. But the Sega CD version replaces these cameos with official Konami characters, which carried on to the PlayStation and Saturn version. So we can see these guys here. Do you recognize any of these little guys?
Is that the guy from Castlevania right there? Belmont, one of the Belmonts.
Yeah.
I don't know who this little baseball dude is, but I'm assuming it's like a cheap
like a
baseball
game.
Yeah, from Japan.
Yeah.
Like Hot Shot Golf, but like Hot Shot Baseball. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I mean, they're all here to see is that the 14-year-old girl stripping, or is that the other girl?
Yeah, they're there to see it. No, that's the other one, I think. Yeah,
the hologram.
Yeah.
Well, thank God.
So let's take a look at Akira here. So we've got Snatcher's music, which was composed by Akira Yamaoka. He is famous for Silent Hill, Contra Hard Corps, Sparkster, and its sequel. Yamaoka worked at Konami from 1993 to 2009 when he moved to Grasshopper Manufacturer.
Oh.
He still releases Konami albums and performs live music. However, mainly it's from Silent Hill games.
Yeah.
He cites David Lynch movie music, Metallica, and Depeche Mode as his inspirations.
Ooh.
And let's listen to some vinyl here. So we have someone bought that Snatcher vinyl release, which sold out
like
super
right away.
fast.
Yeah, I know. There's people in our list all bragging about it, and I'm like, man, go fuck yourself, guys.
It's still infamously, and I'm not throwing any shade. There was a Sonic Retro article about it.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
that?
Yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like, why is this a Sonic Retro article? And it
why
was just because someone liked Snatcher so much and had access to the writer's page of their WordPress that they posted an article, and no one was there to say like, hey dude,
well, hopefully
makes no sense.
Hopefully you got a free one. And anytime you want me to put it on here, we're going to listen to 1 hour and 23 minutes.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah, let's listen to 1 hour and 23 minutes.
Intro.
Teenage Mutant Ninja... No, wait.
Ooh. Very creepy. You'll be alright if I jump around, right?
Yeah. If you see down there, there's $450. You can get the one night in Neo Kobe City.
Oh. Yuzo Koshiro. You hear this?
Yeah.
It's the Depeche Mode track. Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is the good stuff.
Yeah, how much is this vinyl going for? I'm afraid to ask. I have the Police Not one though. Somewhere.
Oh man, but this is not a Data Discs one. This is
not. This is I don't know who did this.
$200 on eBay.
It's not that bad, but it is a lot.
The guy has 10 available.
Damn, this guy just bought them all up.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Damn. All right. It's beautiful stuff, though. It's really good. I think just the game's intro in general is awesome, just because it has that, like, grim lead up. You get the title screen, and then it kicks into that, and you're like, oh, it's going to be fun, too. You know, it's not just going to be grim and dark.
You know what's up? You know what sucks? I just literally noticed that I didn't put. I have the feel the magic overlay for when we talk. I'll just put it over it. No big deal.
Oh yeah, you can edit it over.
Yeah. Nobody's gonna.
So that's
see
a little
this,
behind the scenes.
Yeah, sorry. Nobody's gonna see this. So it doesn't matter. Nobody's gonna see it.
So Snatcher released to glowing reviews. It scored 90 from computer and video games, and the lowest score that I could find was 76 from Electronic Entertainment, a U.S. magazine. Even in retrospective reviews, the game is given glowing scores and is seen as one of the Sega CD's best games. Unfortunately, I do not know the sales numbers, but the game did not see a large run, so I presume it sold well, and now it sells for hundreds, if not over $1,000.
Are you kidding me? $1,000.
So I'm looking right now at sold listings. This is how you do it, guys. You go to that little eBay tab at the bottom, check mark sold and completed listings. May 9th, Snatcher sold in an authentic case with box art and the manual cover, but no game. This is only the box art with the cover to the manual. $316.
Someone wants
no game.
Someone wants $1,000 for the game with a reproduction of the manual.
Yeah. Complete. So here we go. A complete Snatcher sold for $1,275 on May 8th. Looks like someone spent their stimulus money poorly.
Or maybe wisely.
And then again,
in 10 years, he might be sitting on a $10,000 game.
That's true. But then the Mega CD one, though, I'm seeing it here. It sold for $639, so that's not as bad. Here's one that sold for $2,000, complete in an acrylic display case. This one's the game and case with no manual for $500. So, you know, like, you could get lucky, but by and large, like, $1,500, $1,325, $1,300. I mean, yeah.
So the next question's going to be, do you want to see Snatcher re-released? Yeah, we're not paying $1,000 to be able to own it physically. Like, I think just having a Police Knots and this one back to back, and not only that, doing like a definitive version of it where like it comes with all the versions translated in all the languages, that would be huge. And they could sell it for $60.
Oh, absolutely.
Knowing Konami, you know. They're really pimping that Castlevania collection with limited run games recently. I don't know if you saw that announcement. They're doing a physical.
I haven't. No.
Yeah, they're doing a physical version of Castlevania, the collection. And I'm like, why can't we have a Hideo Kojima collection with his early stuff? That would have been pretty sweet.
Yeah, that would have been sweet.
Yeah. Oh well.
Unfortunate, though. Yeah, I mean, like, I'd love to see it re-released. I think, like you said, to do it in a 2-pack collection, I think if Konami wants to come back strong, they could really be like, hey, we're coming back to the world of games. We're going to visit our back catalog. Here is a sweet Kojima 2-pack. We worked with him to release this. And yeah, like, include different versions.
They're never going to work together.
I don't know. I mean... Yeah, I guess you're right. But, you know, maybe we'll see a sequel. No, there never was a sequel. I don't think there ever will be. I mean, I don't even know if we'll ever see a Western re-release, but there has been some crumbs that they have been tossing to fans. In 2011, there was a radio drama that was released by Kojima Productions, which adapted the game's story. It was titled Suda51's SD Snatcher. And Kojima himself actually served as the project's drama planner. Now, I've never heard it, but I wonder if there is the Act 3 or if they end on the same cliffhanger. Of course, Snatcher, it's filled with Metal Gear references. I'm not going to get into all of them. I mean, obviously, Metal Gear himself is in there. But the rumor... So there is one I wanted to mention here. So the rumored project mentioned in Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake is that Madnar, was involved in what turned Big Boss into a cyborg, and it was codenamed Project Snatcher after the titular menace and Snatcher. Though I guess if we're going chronologically, that was the first Snatcher. So that's interesting. So do you have any final thoughts on Snatcher as we close the book on this Konami classic?
I think a lot of people that are listening to this and didn't play it already know this game is a very critically acclaimed, fan favorite, underground classic. I would say it's like right up there with Panzer Dragoon Saga. Whenever you hear anyone that's like over the age of 28 and you ask them, oh, what do you think about Snatcher or Panzer Dragoon Saga, they'll all go, that's one of the best games ever, even if they never played it. It's one of those games that's gotten that, I guess you could say, like, it's gotten that cred, over the years where everyone pretends they played it and says it's a good game and they don't even think about it. Like, you think everybody that says Panzer Dragoon Saga is great owns the game or even played the game, There's a lot of people that just say it because it's one of those things you hear on the internet, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think there are many people that have played Panzer Dragoon Saga, let alone Snatcher, and say they are great games. I guess word of mouth helps, but it would just be awesome to have it finally re-released and we could stop lying, and be like, yeah, I played it because it's awesome.
We're getting Phoenix Wright games re-released, and we're getting like all these other games, but somehow the visual novels from Konami are just not being re-released. It's crazy.
Prove us wrong. In the past, remember we did our Monkey Ball episode, and then like a week later, they're like, Monkey Ball is re-releasing.
Oh yeah.
So maybe that'll happen. Maybe they want to date this episode and make us sound like idiots. But you know who aren't idiots, George?
Our Patreon subscribers.
That's right. So let's see what our Patreon supporters have to say. As I mentioned, you support us at any level. You toss a buck at us every month. It helps us keep going, and it lets you open the door to have your comments read. And you don't even have to talk about the game, you can just be like, I love George.
Well,
you could say that.
Can you? Sexual harassment, dude.
Yeah. No, you can't. Just show your penis to him like Snatcher does.
Oh no, don't do that. I don't want to be in a con. I don't want to be in a con, and then some guy comes up to me, and I'm like, "Cool, dude.
Hey, I listened to your podcast. This is a deep cut. Do you like it?"
Oh no.
Yeah, you're not going to cons. We're not going anywhere.
That's true.
So Jake Workala, he has this to say. He said, Snatcher is my favorite game of all time. I played it for the first time at the ripe age of 13 years old, and it nearly melted my prepubescent brain with how cool it was. This was before I had ever even seen Terminator or Blade Runner, so I never realized how derivative it was. To me, it was entirely unique and mature. In fact, this was the first time I had ever played a game that wasn't for kids, so my jaw was on the floor when I saw John Jack Gibson's head gruesomely twisted off for the first time. A true classic that I will never forget and will always have the fondest nostalgia for, and I like that. I clicked the little heart. So yeah, that does it. That's Snatcher. So you don't have to put in another disc. This is the end of the game. That's it. Game over, man.
Next time, we're going to be talking, it's going to be a mad world, because we're going to be going back to the Wii era to talk about another Platinum Games classic game. Hopefully you guys catch us on that episode. Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/SegaBits. Bye.
Bye.